Hello, this is Ronald Kinsella, and you're listening to the Paranormal UK Radio Network, the UK's biggest paranormal network, and this is Paranormal Dimensions with David Young.
Paranormal Dimensions is fortnightly on Mondays on the Paranormal UK Radio Network.
Since the beginning of time, people have argued about the existence of ghosts. They've been called variously wraiths, specters, phantoms, apparitions, shadows, or shades. But everyone agrees that if there are such things as ghosts, they are the souls of dead persons haunting living persons.
Hello and welcome to the show. Thank you for that introduction, Ronald. Now you can hear Ronald Kinsella with his twin brother, Philip, on this very network with their own show called Twin Souls. Speaking of which, my guest on this show is Eleanor Wagner, who also has her own show on this network, which we no doubt will be talking about. Now, Eleanor's first book, Dream a Little Dream, was a psychological thriller with a romantic edge, and it's garnered a 5-star rating. Released on Halloween 2019, Sussex County Hauntings and Other Strange Phenomena was her first non-fiction book, which inspired her to found the Lady Ghostbusters paranormal team. Sussex County Hauntings and Other Strange Phenomena Part 2 was released in 2020. Warren County Hauntings and Other Strange Phenomena released in October 2021. She's currently working on a second fiction supernatural romance. She is also the host of her own podcast, as I mentioned. It's called Eleanor Wagner's Strange and Scary World, out of the Paranormal UK Radio Network, this very network. She has served twice on the romance panel for the Milford Authors and Writers Festival and presented at the Boonton Book Festival in autumn of 2021. She was also named on Fran Briggs' Best Winter Reading of 2019 list and featured on Paranormal Caught on Camera in 2020, discussing her investigation of the Sterling Hill mines in Ogdensburg, New Jersey. So I should like to welcome to the show, Eleanor Wagner. Hello, Eleanor. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm very proud to have you on. Obviously, I'm going to explain to some of the listeners, Eleanor's got her own show on the same network as we're on here, the Paranormal UK Radio Network. So hopefully Eleanor will tell us a bit about her own show.
Sure. Would you like me to do that now?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Okay. My show is called Eleanor Wagner's Strange and Scary World. A friend of mine pitched the idea last September that I should have a podcast, and the seed stuck. And I said, maybe I should do that because it'll allow me to get this exposure to a whole bunch of new people that I might end up writing chapters about in my books that I write. So I reached out to Mark Johnson, who was an abundance of information, a huge help to me in getting everything set up. He told me what kind of equipment to buy and what to go about and how to go about doing it. And then when he finally mentioned, he said, you should really pitch the idea to my station. And I was like, well, who do I pitch it to? And he said, me.
Yeah.
So I did. And he loved the idea. And he was actually the one that came up with the name because I was throwing stuff around. And he goes, what do you think of this name? And that's how we came up with Eleanor Wagner's Strange and Scary World. And the first show aired in September. And since then, I actually started a live show with another network who reached out to me. And it's been a bit overwhelming because I have Paranormal UK one week and the live show another week. And both of them have their advantages and disadvantages, but it's called time management. And I'm trying to do that while still trying to find time to write my books.
I know I had much the same experience myself when I started. I had no intentions of ever doing a radio show, but I've been on a few others, and all of a sudden I was offered a show with another network. And when Irene actually found out, she said, you can have a show on this network. So I said, oh, okay, then, well, and it sort of went from there, really. I'd never really dreamed of having a radio show myself. You know, it's just the way, I think it's just the way it goes sometimes, isn't it? You know, it's...
and it's addictive. It's addictive. But you meet so many wonderful people and you learn so many new things. And I just love to talk about all sorts of things, especially the paranormal. That's my thing. And it just it gets better and better every time I meet somebody new.
It does, yeah. I mean, obviously, we ought to say, I did try to get this show off the ground about 6-7 months ago, didn't I? And then I suddenly decided I wasn't going to be doing this show any longer, and I wasn't feeling well at the time. But I had so many sort of messages and of support and things that I sort of had to come back and do it. So you were one of the first guests I wanted to get on to actually make up for the show.
Well, thank you. And I'm glad that you stayed. It's
yeah, I'm glad I stayed now. I think the whole, because the world was going crazy and they just got too much for me. I think everything was going on, and but I'm glad I'm back. And but anyway, this show's not about me; it's about you. So now you're a founder of the Lady Ghostbusters, which sounds quite intriguing. What's all that about?
Yes, the Lady Ghostbusters. Well, when I was writing my first book, Sussex County Hauntings and Other Strange Phenomena in 2019, I was given the opportunity to bring a paranormal team into the Ogdensburg Sterling Hill mines here in Sussex County. I was interviewing the president of the mines, and we were having this conversation. He said, I'm a scientist and I'm not supposed to believe in this stuff, but I can't explain what's happening. Why don't you bring your paranormal team in for an investigation and see what you guys come up with? And I was like, oh yeah, that sounds great. Let's arrange a date. And I'm going, shit, I don't have a paranormal team. What am I going to do? Right. So I had to scramble to put one together. And I would oftentimes go away for weekend jousts with friends of mine to haunted buildings. We'd stay overnight and do our own little investigations. And while we did that, here and there, I would meet paranormal teams. And I happened to be in touch with one of them that was local. And I reached out to them and I said, hey, do any of you guys want to come on this adventure with me? And so 3 of them agreed to come that day. And then I reached out to some of the people that I had been interviewed for that first book, because they were just ordinary people like me who were sensitive and loved this sort of thing and had always said, oh, I would love to go on an investigation. So I said, well, heck, I'll introduce myself again and say, I have this opportunity. Would you like to come? And of those people, 3 women joined me that night. So we had probably about 7 of us or 8 of us that went on that original investigation. And oh my goodness, it was amazing. It was really incredible. We got some great footage and everybody just was in sync with one another. In fact, the footage that we got from that investigation, I submitted to Paranormal Court on Camera here in the US. Right. And they liked it so much they did a feature show on that footage and us. And it was fun. It was fun to do that. But that's how it was born. And from that point on, it stuck. And I just picked up new members along the way. Some people come and go, and some people leave for good, and some people new join up. But we always seem to get a group together. Like right now, we have a solid 7 people that go on the investigations. And I continue to have people writing in and saying, oh, I have activity in my home. Can you bring your team? Or, oh, I need help in my business. And historical societies, I always reach out to them too, because my books are really about the landscape of the life. So yeah, so I invited those people to come along with me into the mines, and I actually planned it for my birthday. So it was like a happy birthday to me. And we had such great experiences and evidence from that investigation that we were featured on Paranormal Court on Camera here in the US. Wow. And it stuck. So the group, like I said, is like a good core of 7 right now. and we continue to go on investigations when people reach out to us. I do love to add the history, so I reach out to historical societies and we do some investigations in their buildings. And the history in the books has been very well received by the public because I want them to feel what the town was like back in the day. And then if I have historical information about the building that we're talking about, then I'll share that with them as well. And then I'll share the stories of the people who have experienced things in those locations. And then if I can get my paranormal team in for an investigation, I can always add those experiences into the chapter that I'm writing. And it's been very well received. I put photographs in the books as well because people love to see the pictures of the locations. And then I also extend it to my website. So everything that's in the book is also on my website, but I have additional photographs that I've added. And I've also put the audio and the video and the photographic evidence on the website for people to go to, because it's so much easier for them to look. It's so much the clarity and the visual of it on the internet is so much better than what you get in the book.
Yeah, I mean, we'll make sure we mention the website towards the end of the show, so everyone knows where to go for it. And I'll also put it on
Sounds good.
my show Paranormal Dimensions page as well for it. Now, well, I think an interesting fact of US ghosts, because the US is quite a bit younger than the UK. I imagine there's quite a lot of Native American type stories you might be able to relate. Is there?
There are a lot of Native American spirits on the property, but to be honest with you, as far as stories are concerned, out of all of them, I've literally maybe gotten two. One, like I will go to an investigation and the mediums go, oh my goodness, I can see tons of Native Americans around. And that's really the extent of it. I don't have an actual story per se, but for one that took place in Sussex County in the first book, where the woman said she had this Native American spirit in her home. But really the stories are mostly of people from like the 1800s that I get into in that time frame.
Yeah, well, so they're mostly,
I don't know why it is, but
so they're mostly kind of pioneer type stories, are they?
yeah, I would say that's a good description of it.
Which a lot of them would have come from Europe as well, wouldn't they? Anyway.
Mostly German and Dutch. A lot of the stories have to do with in the areas in the history of this in this particular area anyway.
I think you've written 3 volumes, is it? The Warren County Hauntings and the Sussex County Hauntings, with it, which includes a part 2. Have you got any favorite stories that you'd like to relate?
Sure. I mean, all the books are personal to me. Obviously, the first one really speaks to my personal background and the experiences I've had and how I got into what I'm doing. And then I share experiences that I personally have had. So you find a lot of that in book 1. There's a little of it in book 2 as well. And in Warren counties, it's really not. It's specifically about Warren County, and I've added those other strange phenomena chapters, which I'm so glad that I did, David, because when I was writing the first book and I was getting stories from people in the community, a lot of people were coming out of the woodwork with stories about Bigfoot and UFO encounters.
Oh, that's interesting.
And obviously those stories don't necessarily fit into the ghostly category, and they were so good I wanted to get them into the book, so I added other strange phenomena. I was able to do that in the first book, and I said, you know what, I'm going to keep it going with the other strange phenomena because it opens up a window of opportunity. I don't have to just focus on the community that I live in. If I'm talking about something else, I can actually hear stories from people around the country and around the world. So when I was writing the second book, I added that other strange phenomena category, and I started writing stories of people that were with their loved ones at their time of death and what they experienced, and then visits from deceased loved ones. So it's not just limited to the counties around my area. And then when I was writing Warren County Hauntings, I started talking about near-death experiences. And that was wonderful because I've gotten stories from around the world. And I've made new friends I have a friend now from the UK and somebody from British Columbia. So it's been quite an adventure doing that. And then a new book that I'm writing, I'm touching upon reincarnation. And so that leaves open a world of opportunity as well. But the stories, when people receive visits from their deceased loved ones. Those are visitations and not considered ghostly, but they're just as extraordinary, because those people, when they actually get these visits from their deceased loved ones, they're overwhelmed and joyful, because they know that their loved ones are with them, and that they're someplace else, but they're still with them. And it really touches people's hearts to know that there's something else beyond that. Yeah, there are people that get stuck here who are considered ghosts, but if they go into that light, they can come back whenever they want to and visit. And then you also have the symbolism. People love the symbols that they receive visits from. If it's a dragonfly, for everybody it's different. A butterfly, some people find them in clouds. And I always tell people when I talk to them, it doesn't have to be anything specific. It could be specific to you. You can actually pick what your symbol is. Not too long ago, my daughter was, troubled and concerned about what she was going to do with her life in this world that we're living in right now. She'd gone to college for 4 years and came out, and all this was going on. And she's like, Mom, I'm so freaking confused. And I said, I can give you my advice too, but I said, I always find help in reaching out to my deceased mother and my mother-in-law. And I said, you can do the same. And she's like, Mom, what do you mean I can do the same? How can I do that? I said, pick a sign, reach out to Omi and say, Omi, I really don't know what to do. I really wish you were here to help me. Can you help me? And say to her, pick something and say to her to give you a sign. So she did. And she said, Omi, I can't make a decision. If you think I should go with A, send me feathers. And if you think I should go with B, send me ladybugs. And she said, if you think it's okay to do either of them, send me both. And within 48 hours, she found all these feathers and had all these ladybugs popping up in her vehicle. So I say to everybody, if you just want to know they're around and you want to have that sign, don't be afraid to ask them. Some people use birds in general, or a dove. For me, it's hummingbirds. I love hummingbirds too. And I get them in my perennial garden constantly. And last year in the summer, I was waiting for them and they weren't around. I'm going, where the heck are all the hummingbirds? And I said, Mom, do me a favor, please. I haven't seen a hummingbird yet, and it's almost into July. Can you please send me a hummingbird? And within 24 hours, I had those hummingbirds in my perennial garden. So I just love those stories, and it happens, and it's real, and it's true. And you just have to believe and put it out there to the universe and to your loved ones, and they will give you those answers that you need.
Yeah, I understand that actually, because we've had butterflies in our life since my wife and I have been together. We had butterfly signs when we first found our house together that we were going to go to, that someone had butterfly stickers up, and it just seemed a weird coincidence, But I'm sure those
is a coincidence.
I'm sure those signs are right. Exactly what you say. They are things that they are messages for you to bring forward. It's interesting that you mentioned about near-death experiences, because I was actually going to ask you about that.
Oh, okay.
And reincarnation and things like that. But have you got any particular stories that you can relate to? I can tell you a quick story. You probably haven't heard this, but my wife had a near-death experience. I'm sorry. It's before I knew her, but she's got asthma, you see. And apparently she was rushed to hospital, and she died twice on the way to hospital. And the medics brought her back to life, apparently, but they actually told her that she died twice. But she had this experience of going to the light, and she had this choice to make about coming back.
Yes.
And she, she was adamant that she had this choice to make, and she decided to come back. It's just one of those things that since hearing her say, and I know what sort of person she is, she wouldn't make something like that up. So to me, that's added evidence. It's and obviously you've probably heard that kind of story quite a lot of times.
Absolutely. And I've also heard that when they first die, they have that out of body experience, some of the people, where they're actually hovering over themselves and they're watching the scene unfold beneath them. They're actually watching the medics working on their body, and they're confused about what's going on. I not too long ago interviewed a woman, MK McDaniel, Kathy is her name. We've actually become friends. She had a near-death experience and she wrote a book about it, and that's why I had her on my podcast, because I wanted her to share her story, because in her instance, she was one of those rare people that got to have the glimpse of heaven and hell.
Right.
And apparently there are few of those, but there are instances that people do get to experience them. And she often wondered, when it first happened, why am I getting a glimpse of both heaven and hell? Did I do something wrong? But no, she was almost considered, I guess I could use the word, as a disciple, so to speak, to minister to people about the difference between the heaven and the hell, and how you can make sure you don't go there. So it wasn't that she necessarily was going to hell, but she was given the opportunity to learn about it so that she, when she came back, could share it with the world. And the whole time she was there, she was like, nope, I'm not going back. I don't want to go back. I'm experiencing heaven now and I want to stay here. I don't want to go back. And they were like, nope. You've got things to do. You've got to go back. That's why we gave you this opportunity. You need to tell the world about this experience and both heaven and hell. And so she came back, unwillingly, of course. And when she came back and she woke up to her mother and family, and they said, oh, we've been praying for weeks. She said, I wanted to punch them all in the nose, because I don't want you praying for me to come back. I want to go back where I came from. And so she wrote this wonderful book, and it has shared with the world her experience of heaven and hell. But when she first went to these NDE groups where you get up in front of a bunch of people and you relay your experiences, the people did not know she had experienced them both until she said so. And they were all amazed, and they were like, oh, we've wanted to meet somebody who could tell us about the both worlds, the other beyond in both sides. And it's quite an experience from what she told me.
Yeah, I mean, do you actually believe that there is a hell? I mean, I'm just interested to get your feelings about that, because I just kind of wonder if maybe we're all living on hell here.
Oh no, I definitely believe that there's a hell. And one of the stories in my first book, Sussex County Hauntings, has to do with one of my lady Ghostbusters. Now, when I first interviewed her, she was just a random woman that lived in my community. Her mom had seen my post that I was looking for people who had stories they wanted to share. And she knew her daughter was extremely sensitive and had experienced so many things. She said, Deb, you should really reach out to her. She's writing a book. I'm sure you can have a story or two to share with her. And so I did interview her. Her name is Deborah Zielinski, and she ultimately became a lady Ghostbuster and has been with me for a number of years. But she, by trade, is a nurse, and her specialty was in geriatrics with senior citizens and the elderly. And so over the years, I don't know if you know this, but people in the medical field see so much. They experience so much. And if they're sensitive, oh my goodness, the world is your oyster. And she was in a facility at the time that she worked in the geriatrics. Like I mentioned to you, she was on shift with somebody. They were getting ready to go off shift and leave it with another girl. She said she saw death. And she said she's not afraid of him. He's not this daunting figure. He's actually pretty approachable, to say the least. But she says it's very, very common that in these facilities, that when a resident is going to die, she says it's usually like 3 days or 2 weeks to 3 days. It's different with everybody, but it can be as much as 2 weeks and as early as 3 days before a resident passes away that she will see death prepare them. And once she sees him, she knows that it's not long before they go, and it's never failed that they do end up passing away. But in one instance, she actually saw hell come for somebody, and it was a frightening experience when she was on shift with these women. And she's very sensitive, so she can understand why she would see them. But these women who are not sensitive and saw it had the shit scared out of them. I mean, it got to the point where they were on their knees praying and crying because they couldn't believe what they just saw. They were in the hallway and they hear this resident screaming at the top of her lungs, "Help me, help me, it's trying to kill me." So they run into this woman's room and they flick on the light. And when they flick on the light, they see this thing hovering over her. And its head snapped. When it looked at them, they saw these bright red eyes, and it was about 7 feet tall. And they described it as a Nosferatu-like thing with limb-like, branch-like body parts. And when it snapped and looked at them, when they turned on the light, it literally took off through the wall and out of the room. And they just freaked out. They freaked out, but they had to pull themselves. Yeah. And they had to pull themselves together because this woman was hysterical in her bed, and they tried to go over and calm her down. Meanwhile, trying to calm themselves. Oh, it's okay. It was just a dream. Don't worry about it. And once they got her calm, they rushed together into the bathroom and closed the door and like braced themselves against the wall. And they were like, oh my God, what was that? And it's still, even though it had gotten out of the room, it still like started doing things in the bathroom, like to terrify them. It was turning the lights on and off, and it made the water come on and off. And they were like, oh my God, what is going on? And within a few days, the woman was dead. And Deb is convinced that she was going to hell because this woman was not a nice woman. She was not a nice resident. In fact, she thought her shit stink in life. She had all this money, and she, made people work for her, in demeaning ways. She would actually make Deb, who was her nurse, clean the floor with the toothbrush. So you can kind of get an idea of the type of woman this person was in life, that it was no surprise to Deb that this thing was coming to get her in death. So that to me was only verification that there is a hell, and that's where this lady went.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, was there any particular reason why this person would bring on that type of entity, if you like to call it? Yeah. I mean, I believe it, but I have this problem about an actual place called hell. But maybe I could be wrong completely. I just feel that maybe we're already on hell here, and I mean, obviously, I do believe in other dimensions, and that's one of the reasons why our show is called Paranormal Dimensions.
Right.
And I think a lot of these things that do appear are actually via different dimensions.
Well, maybe reincarnation can explain it a little bit. Do you believe in reincarnation? I guess
I do.
My first question.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So Earth is a place where we come to learn and to experience and to be our better spiritual selves, so that we are the best that we can be before we go to paradise. So we can come back, and we get the option of choosing whether we want to come back. And that's why so many people say, oh, I've lived so many lives. It's because they've chosen to come back and live those lives and learn those lessons. Because some people would say, well, why would you want to come back and be a disabled person? Or why would you want to come back and be this, that, or the other thing? It's because that's another lesson that you can learn, and you can choose to come back again if you want to. Recently, I've been with mediums who have told me this can be your last time here if you want it to be. And I'm thinking, yeah, I don't think I want to come back anymore. I'm not liking the way of the world, and it's really
the way things are going. No, yeah.
Shit, no, I don't want to come back. I think I just want to stay and be okay there, then have to come back and face the crap that we're dealing with now.
Yeah.
So
Or you want to come back as a billionaire or something. And
I don't think you can choose who you want to come back with for sure. I think you can choose to have another lesson, but I don't think you necessarily can say I want to come back as a billionaire. Hey, if I wish I had the money, so many things I would do with it to help different causes. People who are rich, most of them don't even deserve it. I'm just like, it just disgusts me. It really does.
Yeah, it does me too. I mean, I'm always saying to my wife, if we won the lottery, I'd probably give most of it away. Not
Exactly.
not that we do
My husband and I say that all the time. We're huge animal activists, and we're always saying, if I came into this money, we'd be donating it here, we'd be doing this, we'd start doing that. Exactly.
Yeah.
These people who have money, I can't believe that they spend a fortune on, they talk about climate change, and here they are going to a climate summit and paying, astronomical money on these airplanes.
Yeah.
Why don't you just Zoom each other? You don't have to spend all that money and talk about climate change.
Exactly. You don't need to go anywhere now. Just like we're doing, you could do it by Zoom.
Yeah. Yeah. Why do you have to get on a plane and destroy the climate by using that plane to talk about climate change? It just makes no sense. It's a backwards world we live in. It's really screwy.
Well, I think we know what goes on. It's all these backroom deals that go on with backhanders and money and all the big meals and things that they have.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
We'll be having hits out on us, won't we?
Oh my goodness.
We've probably got the same attitude about all that. Yeah. I mean, it does interest me actually about that harbinger of death. That was it very much like what we see with the big scythe over the shoulder? And have you ever experienced or heard of that experience of the what they call? I can't think. I know it's the harbinger of death with the big scythe over his shoulder.
Oh, that's not how she described him. No, it was frightening. Like I said, she used the description Nosferatu, so I can envision that. And then
which is like a vampire type of thing, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And then she said these branch-like limbs, so I could picture that. And then she said these bright red eyes and the way it snapped its head. I mean, all of that in itself is very frightening to think. And it's 7 feet tall, and that it just dissipated into the wall. And then it almost makes you feel like, look around, is it behind us now? Like, did it come behind us? Like, I mean, it's just terrifying to think that this thing was there.
I think another interesting aspect of that is, were there not any of the godly angels there to protect her from this?
I guess, when you're talking about how you live your life, it's that karma thing. If you lived a horrible life, karma is going to come to bite you in the ass. Why would angels come and save you? You don't deserve to be saved. Make sure you live your life well, David.
I do try to live a good life. I mean, nobody's perfect. Obviously, we've all made our mistakes along the way.
No, we all have our faults, but I'm confident that I'm living a good life, and that Nosferatu thing won't be coming to get me.
And we don't have to be religious, do we? We don't. I mean, I'm not actually a religious person at all.
No,
I don't believe in a god as such, but I do believe in spirit, obviously, and that we all go to somewhere which is all encompassing. Love, I guess, is the only way I can sort of think of describing it, and that's how my wife described it to me.
That everybody describes their God or their being in a certain way, and that but I think it's all one and the same, even though we're describing it differently.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's how we want it to, how we envision it.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to believe that there is something, because I really fear for those people that believe in nothing.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the thing is, with a lot of those people will get a shock when they actually go, won't they? They're like,
maybe they're the ones. Maybe they're the ones that are getting left behind. Maybe a lot of them are the people that didn't believe in anything.
Yeah. So I mean, I suppose that raises another question: do we all become ghosts, or do we go beyond that? With most of us, if we know that we've died, we go beyond the part of being a ghost. And I guess the people that don't know that they've died, or they've got some sort of a I don't know, something different, that they become ghosts. Is that how it happens? In your
Yes,
experience?
for some of them it's from what I've experienced anyway, it's a tragic death that they suddenly die and don't know that they're dead. I've had instances where spirits that we've come in contact were in that particular position. And then there are other instances where they're afraid to go into the light for various reasons. I've had instances with that. And then there were other instances where people are just so attached to their things here that they don't want to leave them, or they have unfinished business that keeps them from leaving.
Right. Which means that they're very attached to their human lives rather than their spiritual life, because obviously our spirit is different to our human lives, and
Yes.
really both of those are sort of unaware of each other. Well, I think the spirit is aware of the human life, but the human life isn't aware of the spiritual being in us. And why
Yeah.
would that be, do you think?
I don't think that it necessarily is. I think that it's there for the taking if we embrace it. When I want to say we as a human person nowadays are more openly receptive to learning about these things than say we were 10 years ago. 10 years ago, some people didn't want to hear anything about it. They called it evil and didn't believe in it. Now, there's still people that don't think it's something that we should understand, but because people are more openly receptive to it, we're learning more and more about it. But I think that it's there for us to learn and to take. For example, if you have a child and you know that that child is sensitive, they're seeing and hearing and talking about things that you yourself may not understand. As a parent, we should really be nurturing that and trying to learn about it and embracing it so that child knows there's nothing wrong with them, that it's a gift. A lot of children back in the day were told that they were crazy and were labeled like schizophrenic or something when they really weren't. They were actually seeing and hearing spirit and were able to communicate, and people were calling them crazy. So I think that if we look outside the box and are open-minded and accepting of these things, we'd be surprised about how much we could learn about our spirit selves and actually maybe see them more than we would if we're shutting it down.
Yeah. Something else that I find actually surprising, some religious people find it hard to believe in things as ghosts, crazy as it sounds.
And you know what? It's I'm a Christian woman myself, and I find a lot of nuances to ghostly things in the Bible. And I'm not supposed to say that. And I think it's because of what we are spoon-fed. I don't really believe in organized religion myself anymore. Hey, I was brought up and raised a Catholic, but I don't believe in organized religion. I believe that I'm a Christian. I believe that Jesus is my Lord and Savior. And I believe that someday I'm going to get to see him and I'm going to go into paradise. But if I said that to any other organized religion, like Catholicism or even the Methodists or the Presbyterian, they'd all say, I'm not supposed to believe that. I'm not supposed to believe in reincarnation either, but I do. But you know what? That's why I don't belong to any kind of organized religion anymore. That's why I say my prayers and talk to my Lord and Savior in the privacy of my own home and learn in my own way, because I feel like we're spoon-fed things that we're supposed to believe in. And they say, if it's not in our book and if it's not what we teach you, you're not supposed to believe in it. And that's why I feel like a lot of people get misled. I mean, there's so much in the Bible that refers to spiritualism. I mean, look at the wise men themselves. The wise men themselves, they look to the stars for answers. Is that not something that's spiritually motivated? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I feel like there's a lot of stuff that we're not
I think we had a touch of spirit there. I don't know what that ding dong was we heard.
It was on my phone. I'm sorry.
I thought, that's all right. I thought we had a bit of a spiritual intervention.
No, that was just my alarm going off.
Now, we were talking about reincarnation, or you brought the subject
Yes.
up of reincarnation. Have you had any interesting experiences of people that have spoken about their past lives?
Oh my goodness. When I started writing the chapter about reincarnation in the new book that I have coming out this year, I literally threw myself into the research because I wanted to read as much as I could about it. And the reason why I was so fascinated with it is because personally, I have always had a strong attachment to the Victorian era, and I've always had a strong attachment to the Titanic. Now, personally, in my life, I know that my grandma was supposed to be on the Titanic, and she did not take that voyage because her twin daughters got really sick. And so she stayed behind. And a good thing that she did, because had she gone on that voyage, she would have been below deck and she would have died. And my father would never have been born. And then I would not be here.
Yeah.
So, but I've often had a strong connection to it and wondered in the back of my mind, is there a reason why I'm so connected to the Victorian era? Is there a reason why I'm so connected to the Titanic? And I wanted to find out about it because I remember when the movie came out, my husband and I went to see it, and I was bawling my eyes out in the theater. And I was really traumatized for months after. I mean, I remember trying to get my hand on everything I could about the true account that people had written after they were saved and survived the accident, because there were those survivors. And we actually took a trip to Nova Scotia and went to the museum to see artifacts from the actual ship that had floated up when they went to go get the survivors. And I was really affected by that all too. So you wonder, when people have these strong attachments to certain things in their own personal lives, why they have them. And when I was doing all of this research, I don't know if I opened up a window that was making me see things that I didn't see before, because I'm always learning and always trying to be more openly receptive to things so that I could find out about myself personally. I ended up having this dream that was so vivid, and it was like kind of like you're watching a movie, but you're living it. It's not like I was watching it on screen unfold. I could see it through my eyes, and it was literally the last hour of my life in a life that I had been living. And I talked to team members at the time, and they had said, "Oh, you were reliving one of your previous lives' death moments." And I'm like, wow, that is crazy, because I could see that last hour, I lived that last hour in this dream and could relay it so perfectly. So when I was doing this research on the chapters and getting stories from people, I decided to go through past life regression, because I too wanted to experience it and see if I could unearth maybe some things that I didn't know, or some lives that I didn't know about that I had lived. But these stories that people share are very amazing. And my first connection to a story with a reader was with a team member of my own. His name is Art Peterson, and I wrote his story in my first book. And he actually had a fear of water since he was a child, and was terrified of water and swimming and possibly drowning. And it took years of his mother working with him to him actually being able to get into the water. But as he got older, he began to learn why, because he is very spiritually connected and wanted to learn. He's got the Native American history in his background. He did his own research and his own studies, and he ultimately ended up finding out who he was. And because he's a sensitive himself, that helped. He knew he had a name that had three names to it. Let's just say like Mary Ann Mason, let's say. Like he knew he had three names to his names, but he just needed to find out who it was. But because he was sensitive, when his deceased friend came to him, his deceased friend told him who he was. And then after that, he took that information and he went researching it. And because there are periods of time where there are recorded information online that you're able to unearth this information down to a certain extent in time, per se, like during the wars, they do have a lot of footage and photographs of soldiers and military and that sort of thing. So he was able to trace back that he had went down in a plane in one of the wars, and he got an actual picture of who he was in that previous life.
Wow.
And he did drown in the water. And when you take the picture of him now and the picture of who he was, it's amazing the resemblance between the two of them. I mean, of course, Art nowadays has really long hair, and he looks like a real, you could see the Native American in him. And if you compare it to the picture of who he was when he died, he had slicked back hair and a military uniform on, but the physical resemblance was amazing. And there was, in my opinion, no denying that they were one and the same person, just in different lives. And so when I decided to write about reincarnation in the book that's coming out, I actually wrote Mark Johnson, our own Mark Johnson story, and that will be coming out in that book. When he found out who he was in a previous life, and he was a female, and if you put the picture of him next to the female photo of this woman, you can see that they're one and the same. There's no denying that resemblance. But a lot of people experience their young children talking about, in my life before I came here, Mom, and parents are blown away. And I really feel like if somebody has that experience with their child, because it does happen with a lot of children up until they're like 5 or 6 when they start to lose those memories, it's really important for those parents to nurture it so that they could remember it and maybe learn from it as they grow older. Because what's wrong with us not being able to remember those things? There's nothing wrong with it. We should be able to, and it only will help them learn more about themselves and the lessons that they have to learn, and why they're experiencing what they are and who they were.
Definitely.
A lot of ailments and stuff that we have in these days, it can explain or can be explained away because of lives previously. If we have birthmarks in certain areas, it's said in my study, in the research, that those beauty marks were actual wounds that we suffered in previous lives, that are the signs that are left on our bodies today, almost like a reminder of who we were and how we died previously.
Oh, right. So if someone's got something like maybe bad arthritis or something, maybe that's a connection to a previous life, perhaps.
Perhaps. I mean, some of the research I've read about, some people came back missing limbs, and when they found out who they were in a previous life, they had lost that limb in an accident when they died. Pretty interesting. It
is, yeah. I know when you were mentioning about the Titanic, and obviously it was a very emotional film anyway, and I think that made a lot of us realise how horrific it actually was. On the big screen, and the way it was presented, I think it was brilliant. And as you were mentioning about, you saw the artifacts, I actually saw that there was an exhibition they did in Las Vegas with some of those parts. It was probably the same thing that was touring that you may have seen.
Beach chairs and stuff from the
all sorts of like portholes and things like that, and all that sort of stuff. Tropicana, I think it was, the hotel. Well, I don't think it's there now in Las Vegas, but
probably the exhibition probably travels around. And one of the stories I have coming out in the new book is about a woman who actually found out she would have these dream visions too. And it would happen in spurts. She would see it in parts, like one part she would see, and then she'd have another dream, and it would be like a continuation of the story. And ultimately she found out that she was on the Titanic. And when she did homework to go into the manifest to see if she could find a name that coincided with her story, there was only one that she could find that was recorded that seemed like it was possible that's who she was when she passed away.
Wow. Sounds very interesting. That's another one on my list of piles of books that I've got on my shelves that I'll probably never get a chance to read.
That you've never gotten a chance to read.
That's our problem nowadays. We're so full of everything on YouTube and God knows where else. It's and all our radio shows. It's just we're just inundated with it. We've got too much, haven't we?
Yes.
We went into the realms of dimensions. Now, I think that there's a lot of connections between UFOs, and you mentioned Bigfoot and things like that. Do you see connections with a lot of those things?
I haven't really learned much about dimensions and interdimensional stuff. I would love to do a chapter on that eventually in one of the other books and really sink my teeth into it, because I know when I'm writing a chapter on it, then I'll start looking for all sorts of stuff and getting information on it. But I've always been intrigued with time travel. So that's another thing I really want to find out about, because I do feel, I know people may think I'm crazy, but I think there is a possibility that that kind of is real, that it does happen.
Yeah,
that
no, I
it's
agree with you.
possible.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I mean, I think there's a lot of stuff we just don't know about.
In fact, you mentioned time travel. On my show that went out last week, if you're listening to this now, it was recorded, but on the July the 4th, I've got a fellow on the show called Gary Osborne, which was been last week, if you're listening to this now. And he talks a lot about time travel, because he wrote a book with Jim Penniston, who touched the craft in Rendlesham Forest. And he talks a lot about time travel and measurements with the pyramids and everything. It's actually a fascinating story, because Jim believes that the spacecraft that came to Rendlesham in 1980 was actually from our future.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it's because he touched there was some markings on it, and he got a download, and it's all ones and zeros, and this is where the story of how Gary Osborne got involved in it. So if you get a chance to have a listen to that show, which went out before this show last time, please do.
I will. Did you say it's airing on July 4th?
4th of July, yeah, it'll be coming out.
Oh, okay.
Obviously, you can
great,
download
yeah.
it. It's a good 2-hour show. It's fascinating. I'm not very much into mathematics, but there's a lot of mathematics involved in it. So, and Gary did a very good job of putting the story over, actually. So if you want to catch that one, it's quite interesting.
Yeah. Thank you.
No, that's right. Yeah, as I say, we were talking about the dimensional things. I couldn't see any connections between ghosts and UFOs and Bigfoot and things until over the last few years, when I started to become aware that I think there's connections between all these things, all the paranormal.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, we do hear about Bigfoot disappears, appears and disappears, and it's been linked to UFOs. Well, I don't know how you feel about it. Do you believe in UFOs?
The linking, see, that's something that came out when I was writing Bigfoot chapters, because when I was doing my homework here in Sussex County, there was a UFO crash back in, I want to say it was the 50s. And it was in Lake Owassa in Sussex County, and it was on a farm. And the people on the farm were hushed by the government. The government came in and got this thing out of their lake, and they secretly took it away. And the family was told they were not allowed to talk about it. But the young kid at the time grew up to be a man, and his entire life he talked about it and wanted people to hear the story and wanted to get his word out. And when he passed away, the torch was passed to his niece, who decided to keep his legacy alive by trying to share with the public what happened on the farm, and that the government was trying to shut them up. And so she ultimately ended up writing a story about it. But when that particular incident happened, shortly thereafter, all of a sudden, these sightings of Bigfoot started happening in the area of Sussex County. And a lot of people felt like there was a connection between that aircraft crashing and Bigfoot suddenly showing up. So I have seen that connection of people believing that one has something to do with the other.
Yeah, you do hear that quite a lot.
I think it's very, very strange that this creature seems to be able to evade being caught. And I feel like they are extraordinarily intelligent and have some method or means to be able to evade being caught and only seen in these small instances by people.
Absolutely. And obviously, I mean, in the US alone, the Bigfoot creature, or Sasquatch, whatever you want to call it, is seen quite in quite a lot of varied areas in the US.
Yeah. Yep. Yep, we have a mountain right here called High Point State Park. And like I said, when I was writing that first book, I thought it was going to only be ghostly accounts, but all these people came out of the woodwork telling me about, I saw Bigfoot in High Point State Park. And then I realized that there's an actual group that does these searches in High Point because of those sightings. It's called in the gentleman is Mike Familante, and he actually has his own podcast, In the Shadow of Big Red Eye is what it's called. And he's been doing it for years because he himself has been heading up these I don't want to call them hunts, because he would never hunt it down. He would just like to see it and learn more about it, but he would never want to try and catch it and test on it or anything like that. He has no desire to do that. He's very intrigued and does believe that it exists. And he has these expeditions, I guess you could refer to it as, where people on his team will go out where there are various sightings to see if they can pick up any evidence and maybe see another sighting of the big red eye. Because here in Sussex County, people refer to the big red eye as Bigfoot. They're one and the same.
Right. And I think there's always that disappointment. You don't want to find it because it kind of ends the legend, doesn't it? Once you find it.
I suppose so.
It's a bit like our Loch Ness monster. It's been there for hundreds of years, but nobody really wants to find it because it'll end the legend.
Yeah.
It's an interesting aspect of it. I just wonder if what your thoughts on it were. I mean,
well, here's something that my daughter just told me, because we're talking about these elusive things that, you know, people see and we talk about, and so many believe in and so many don't believe in. My daughter just told me the other day she watched a documentary where this man, he's the very first man who was able to travel in some sort of contraption that he created to the bottom of the ocean. And he went to the deepest part of the ocean in the world and traversed in this contraption that he built all the way to the bottom. And he came up with pictures and evidence of creatures that we've never seen before, because we've never been to that deepest point in the ocean. And hear this, he actually came up with photographs of like tire marks of some sort down on the bottom of the ocean floor. Like what the crap is that? What's moving down there on the bottom of the ocean?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we've ever been to the deepest parts of the ocean. I know you can go.
No.
One or two have been to the.
No, we've not. We have not been. In fact, this documentary is specifically because this one man just accomplished that feat. And so that's why they had this documentary saying, here he is, there's this guy, he did it. He's the first one, just like the first one to go to the top of Mount Everest was documented. He was the first one to go to the bottom of the ocean at the deepest point. And this is what he's unearthed. There is life forms down there that we've never even learned about until now. But he also has these photographs of these tire mark kind of things, like a roadway at the bottom of the ocean.
I mean, we do hear about UFOs that disappear into the ocean and emerge from the ocean. So maybe there's some sort of a connection
they're always saying there's some kind of significance or connection to the water and the UFOs. I mean, I wrote about it in the first book as well. A retired police officer didn't talk about it for years. He only talked about it with his buddy who experienced it with him, because they were up for promotion and they didn't want to be called crazy, but they were privy to this site that had a sighting of a UFO, and Professor Hynek got involved in it with the government, all of that at the time. But it was in the water in a dam that this thing was shining its light down and melting 20 feet thick ice on the dam to get to whatever was in the water. I don't know. Why were they burning and melting the ice to get into the water? Who knows? But there's always this connection with UFOs and water for whatever reason. They've been in the water, they're under the water, they're doing something with the water. So who's to say that they're not driving little vehicles at the bottom of the sea?
Yeah. Well, I mean, to me, it follows on that if they can travel through space, they can no doubt travel through water as well. You know, it sort of goes together, really, to me.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, Eleanor, with what are your psychic abilities? How deep are your abilities?
Oh, I'm not nearly as experienced or gifted as some of the people on my team. I, and it was probably because I stifled it when I was a kid. I used to have premonitions when I was a kid, and one of them was really scary and it came true. And I think I kind of scarred myself a little bit. So it wasn't
Hmm.
until I was 30 that I kind of reawakened. It was on my father's death. So from 30 on to now, I'm 57. I've kind of tried to learn more about what I'm able to do and maybe expand upon it and nurture it a little bit more. I call my sensitivity a feeling. If there's something there, I actually feel like I'm drunk. I'm off balanced when I feel it. And I can know if it's good or if it's bad, but that's really the extent of my own personal abilities. If I want to communicate with the spirit, I have to whip out my dowsing rods.
All right. I was actually going to ask you what kind of equipment you use. Have you had any interesting EVPs at all?
Sure. I mean, we love to go in and take videos and always use our cameras to take pictures and audio footage. Those are the three go-tos. And we do use our K2s because we do like to see if there's any kind of energy around. And then if we do sense that there's energy using the K2s, we try to debunk it and make sure there's not anything electrical around that's going to be the answer to why we're getting that energy on the K2. And then we do use an SLS camera as well because I think they're cool. I think they're really cool to be able to see if there's something there energy wise on camera. And we've gotten some great evidence that way. But as far as the audio stuff, we have gotten a few things that were really interesting. One, which was, I think, probably the best, in my opinion, was when we got a family's deceased loved one come through, and he was kind of mischievous in a way, and she said that was his personality in life, but to actually get him vocalizing something on the audio and then to be able to present it to the family and for them to listen to it and go, oh my God, that's grandpa. That was amazing. That in itself was like, oh wow, they recognized his voice and he was actually here, letting them know he's okay. So we do use the audio, and it is tiresome to have to go through it after the fact. In fact, I usually unload it on somebody else on the team because I don't have the time or the patience to go through it myself personally because I'm doing so much else.
That is the
So
problem. You've got to go through the whole evening again, haven't you?
it is a pain, isn't it? It's a pain in the ass to listen to that stuff. You have to really have your headphones on and listen to it carefully. So I have Margaret on my team who seems to not mind doing it. And I'm like, here, take mine, listen and see if I got anything on.
They seem to do on a lot of shows now. They seem to ask a question and then listen to it straight away, don't they? Rather than have to go and then sort of put everything together at the end of the show. So maybe that's the way to go. Ask a question and see if you get an answer to it straight away.
Of the audio nowadays. Yeah, you can listen to it straight away.
Yeah, I think it's probably the way to go for that. And what about things like Ouija boards? And do you use anything like that?
No, I would never go near a Ouija board, and I don't recommend it at all. I mean, why do you want to mess with something when you don't know what you're going to be inviting in? I mean, people, and I know some people do that. I'm like, no, why would you want to do that? And it's really funny because there was one woman that was a team member, and she really has a rough life. She's told me use it all the time, and I'm thinking to myself, oh, don't you ever think why your life is so screwed up has something to do with you playing with the Ouija board all the time? Like, I think there might be a connection there. You're messing with the Ouija board, and now you got all this activity in your apartment, and your life is really, it really sucks. Put it that way. You have it's sucking for you lately, and it's been a really long time that it's sucking. Don't you think that might have something to do with it? And she'd be like, oh no, the Ouija board's great. And I'm like, no, it's not. And I wouldn't touch it. And I think the reason why you have such a rough life is probably because you're messing with that.
Yeah. Well, I have spoken to several mediums myself about it. Obviously, over the years I've been doing this show and everything, and I think a lot. The important thing is when you're using Ouija board. If there's anyone out there listening to this show about Ouija boards, and you're a bit unsure now after
Sorry,
listening to
Dave,
what
you
Eleanor
are
said,
breaking up again. Now
you do need to actually open and close it properly, and I think that's an important aspect of it. And I do understand you're not supposed to leave the planchette up with the board as well. You're supposed to put it away in a drawer somewhere.
Oh, I didn't even know that. But like I said, I wouldn't have anything to do with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's differing attitudes about it, but I have spoken to several mediums, and they say it's really just another tool that's in your toolbox that you can use. It's just that the important thing is to open and close it properly. So, you know, I mean, I've used it over the years, on and off myself, and especially when we were teenagers. You know, I think everyone had a go at it then. But and we never used to open and close it. We used to just get a glass out and put numbers around the table, and then start talking to what we thought were spirits. And the glass would stop whizzing around the table and stuff like that. And I don't actually think it did us any harm. Well, not that I know of, anyway.
It might affect different people in different ways. If somebody is sensitive and really sensitive and they play with it and they're, you know, because they're that sensitive, it might have a way of influencing that person or their life in some way or shape or form, or may attach themselves to the person.
Yeah, I was going to say like an attachment. Yeah, I'll just relate this little story. In my younger days, there was myself and my girlfriend at the time, and her friend and her boyfriend. He didn't believe in the Ouija board at all, and we actually said to him, I said, well, we said, go and sit in the corner and write on a piece of paper, you know, a word or something, and we'll ask the Ouija board what you've actually written. And anyway, we did this, and the Ouija board spelt out gun, Gun. And he went
really?
White. He went white because what he'd done, he hadn't actually written the word gun. He drew a little picture of one, and he held it up.
Oh,
Which was quite freaky to us, because all of a sudden we thought, wow, really is something in this, you know.
yeah.
It's just one of those little stories that's always stuck with me, you know. It was kind of a little bit of a confirmation to all of us sitting around the table that there is something in this, you know.
Yeah. Agreed.
But also, we used to get the mischievous spirits as well that sort of send you all over the place and tell you lies.
Yeah.
Anyway, Eleanor, we're coming towards the end. I guess you've got a YouTube site, haven't you, where people can see some of your videos and experiences?
Yeah, well, you can access everything directly from my website, authoreleanorwagner.com. If you go to my website, you'll see I have galleries set up for each of the books. And when you go into the galleries, it's divided up into the chapters, and the photographs and the video footage and the audio and the photographs are all in those particular sections. And it'll take you to the link directed to the YouTube. So everything is accessible, including the books themselves, through my website, authoreleanorwagner.com.
Yeah, that sounds good. I'll put some links on the Paranormal Dimensions page. Do take a look, because I do try to sort of keep up with what the shows are all about and who's coming up and everything like that. And so I will put those links on my page. But
Terrific, thank you.
It's been fantastic talking to you. I'm sorry about the sound problems we've had along the way.
Oh, no worries at all. I understand, it happens. I know, being a podcaster myself, I know what it happens, so don't worry about it.
Yeah, it's technology, eh? Oh, yeah.
Yes.
But anyway, Eleanor, it's been great talking to you, and good luck with your show. We'll catch up on a few of your shows and have a listen.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It was lovely talking to you.
You too. Take care of yourself. Thank you, Eleanor. Bye-bye.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. There we are. That was Eleanor Wagner. Thank you again, Eleanor. It was a great show. I hope you enjoyed that. As always, if you'd like to get in touch with me at any time, my email address is davidyoung2qn@yahoo.co.uk. That's davidyoung2qn@yahoo.co.uk. I hope you'll join me again next time when my guest will be Bob Brown, who is also a podcaster. He has his own show, Somewhere Over the Rainbow. So we shall find out what that's all about. Until then, until the next time, thank you for listening, and everyone take care, and I'll speak to you next time. Bye-bye.
Paranormal Dimensions is as bright and powerful as our celestial star, the sun. And although it's expending thousands of pounds of energy every minute of the day, have no fear. There's plenty left.
Paranormal Dimensions is fortnightly on Mondays on the Paranormal UK radio network.